My grandfather thinks this town is cursed. He says that all the bad things that happen in this town are because of one thing, an evil thing that feeds off the people of Derry.
But it can't be one thing. We all saw something different.
Maybe. Or maybe it knows what scares us most, and that's what we see.
I saw a leper. He was like a walking infection.
But you didn't. Because it isn't real. None of this is. None of this makes any sense. They're all like bad dreams.
I don't think so. I know the difference between a bad dream and real life, okay? We're all afraid of something.
Got that right. Hi, Rich. What are you afraid of? Clowns.
Hello, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Brian Michael.
And I'm Angela Yeager. You saw a clip at the top of the show for our first movie this week, which is It. And it is about a group of young children who band together to fight an evil clown in their small town. And of course, this is based on the very popular Stephen King novel, which has been made into a mini-series once before, and I think a feature film, or just a mini-series? Just a mini-series, yeah. And this is the much heralded, there's been a lot of buzz about this movie leading up to it, that it's a lot more.
Trailer of the year.
It's a good trailer. It's a very good trailer.
It's a fantastic trailer.
And the movie does not disappoint. I enjoyed it. It's not a horror classic, in my opinion. This is not a 4-star film, but it's very good. The kids are all well cast, if a few of them don't get too much to do, which was disappointing. But it really focuses on kind of 3 or 4 main kids. The main character of Bill, I believe, who was the kid that was in Midnight Special. Mm-hmm. And I really liked the young girl who plays Beverly. I hadn't seen that actress before, Sophia Lillis, but I thought she was quite good and has a very good future. And of course, Bill Skarsgård of the very famous Skarsgård family as Pennywise the clown.
Can you say Skarsgård without the smile?
I don't think I can. No, they're all just extremely hot. That's all there is to say about that. But not so hot in this movie, though. Pennywise is very scary. But this is it's a really well executed studio movie. There is nothing groundbreaking here. There's nothing super innovative. You and I were talking before the show about Stephen King adaptations and debating whether Misery or Shining is. And I would say Shining's a better movie, even though it's maybe not as scary as Misery, because it's a more interesting film from an artistic perspective. Sure. This film doesn't.
That's what I want to watch. That's what I want a horror.
Well,
film
sometimes
for.
A horror movie can be scary and artistically creative, and those are really the best ones. Yeah, Suspiria. The Exorcist has great shots and photography. This one plays it safe. It doesn't have anything that visually is too interesting. The kids are, overall kind of what?
No, go ahead.
What does that look?
I thought it had a great look. I really enjoyed this film. Actually, I flirted with giving it 4 stars.
Really?
Because it had to take on something major. I'm not going to review the book. Good Lord. Was there a book? Yeah, I know there was a book. A very big book, in fact. And they do have a lot to kind of cram in there. And some of the kids, they kind of glossed over some backstories. And that's fine because they only needed to just kind of show their fear and him feeding on the fear of this town and how this whole town just kind of turns on children. And we get to see that history of every 27 years. I thought the look of it was really good. In fact, how great that trailer was. And everyone always says, the best scenes were in the trailer. They don't put the worst scenes in the trailer, people. But actually, the best scenes that were in the trailer were the best scenes in the movie because there's something else that was tagged on when he says, we all float down here. There's something extra that happens, and I thought that was really terrifying. And then the other scene, which I thought was fantastic, that slideshow section is terrifying, and then at the very end of that one, actually, something more happens that's not in the trailer that I thought was really good. I had a lot of good scares. People say there's a lot of jump scares necessarily in the film, but I thought it played off of, terrifying these children and what scared them the most and kind of getting into that mood of being a kid. We talked about Stranger Things before the show, and a great television show that really did a good job of getting that feel of the 80s, these kids getting together and solving a problem and going on an adventure together, with their BMX bikes. I really enjoyed that. And it takes, like I said, it just takes on an awful lot, but I really enjoyed all of the characters. They're really great performances. You know, doing a stutter is really, really hard. And I thought he did a really good job of pulling that off. And I thought that the villains, you know, the kids that were terrorizing, you know, were very menacing, or they really didn't pull any punches, because there are some scary things. This movie easily could have been NC-17 if they really were to add up the book straight across, but I think that would have been a little bit too intense, and some people can't watch some of those things. But I was really impressed. I thought it was a really good film.
Yeah, no, I'm giving it 3 stars, but I guess I thought, you know, there was jump scares, or there was, you know, scares throughout the movie, but as like great horror that really, you know, I scare easily, that sticks with you. And I'm already scared of clowns, and it didn't really stick with me in terms of, you know, I didn't think about it a lot afterwards or get scared thinking about it the way I did for The Conjuring, for instance, where I was kind of looking in dark corners for several days after, or The Ring, where I was waiting for, you know, that, you know, woman to come out. Yeah, you know, it wasn't like that. And, you know, Pennywise was scary in the movie, but he wasn't so scary that I felt like it was a presence that, there was something in terms of the atmosphere and everything. It didn't really stick with me.
If you came home and found a red balloon floating in your living room, that wouldn't have freaked you out?
Well, maybe, but that's a pretty if. I mean, I'm saying about things that stay with you, where you're thinking about the horror and the psychological horror for days after.
You know, I saw the Annabelle sequel. Actually had some really good scares in that film, and I liked that movie. And that actually was a little bit more when I got home and went to bed. That was one of those turn off the lights, jump out of bed. This one didn't so as much, but I enjoyed the storytelling from beginning to end, and it doesn't lag at all. There's not one act, there's not one scene from me. I've seen it twice now. It just moves right along, bing, bing, bing. Because I mean, it has so much to get through, and I really enjoyed that. So, and being attacked by not only just having blood coming out of the drain, but having the hair attack you.
Yeah, it was like people's worst. In a way, you know, it actually reminded me a little bit strangely of Nightmare on Elm Street. I don't know why, but, you know, people's worst fears, their worst nightmares coming back to them. So that element of that, which is great. But there's still those tropes where, you know, when they separate the first time they go into the house, I just like, don't do that. Don't.
But they get pulled away in a good way.
I
mean, it happens.
I just get so mad when some character wanders off and you're like, well, you know what's going to happen to him now, because it's not going to be good. So
but then they have the 3 doors. Not scared. Pretty scared, really scared. I love that.
I know, and I thought you should definitely go for really scary. I guess.
I did actually. I will say that there was a couple really good scares in the movie, and I did have the fight or flight situation. I actually did at one point in time bunch up my fist watching the movie and just said, "Hit him, just hit him," and I kind of raised my fist like, "What are you gonna do, dummy?" Yeah.
Yeah, you were also laughing a lot, but I think that's what you do when you're scared.
When I get nervous,
you giggle, yeah. Okay, we'll move on to our next movie, which is Lost in Paris, and we have a clip for you.
It's from my Aunt Martha. Dear Fiona, help. After 48 years living in Paris, they want me to move to an old people's home. Ridiculous. I'm only 88.
You've always wanted to go to Paris.
Yeah. Martha?
No, forget.
Oh. Je cherche ma tante Martha. Excusez-moi. Photo?
Okay, you saw a clip for Lost in Paris, in which a Canadian woman goes to Paris to find and visit her aunt, who has written her a letter asking for help. But instead, she does not find her aunt. Instead, she finds a homeless man who begins to follow her around Paris as she goes through pratfalls and adventures. This film is directed and starring and written by the stars of the film, Fiona Gordon and Dominique Abel, who are also a real-life couple, and previously met in the circus, which I think makes a lot of sense, which I found out after I watched the movie, and it totally made sense, because this film is just a pure joy from beginning to end, in my opinion. It was just the antidote I needed. And sometimes, dear viewers, when you were in the mood for a certain kind of movie, and this movie I happened to see it in a week where I was in a very dark mood and having, there's been a lot of dark movies this winter, or this summer. And I had just seen Wind River, which is a terrific film. But very dark. And I had just seen that, and I was like, man, can't someone just do a good comedy anymore? And then I saw this, and it was just a pleasure from beginning to end. I like that the characters aren't conventional looking, that Fiona Gordon's kind of an odd looking, a different kind of looking woman, but definitely holds the screen with her presence. Same thing for Dom. I thought their dance sequence towards the beginning on the boat, to me, was one of the great scenes in the cinema this year or any year.
That's
I mean,
a magical
it was magical.
Yeah.
And there's not that often you get to say that with as many movies we see, something that is very magical. Emmanuelle Riva, who's one of the great sirens of French cinema, who was a big sex symbol back in her day, plays the elderly aunt, and she's aged very well, like the French women always seem to do, and like a lot of our actresses in America, she hasn't cut herself up into, where you can't recognize her anymore. And she has a great little scene on a bench with an older man who was a former lover of hers, and they have a great little dancing scene with just their feet. So there's just a lot of wondrous, imaginative gags and fantasy in this film that I enjoyed. So I'm curious to think what you think.
There was a movie called Gleaners and I that we watched, and you thoroughly loved more than I did. I gave it 3.5 stars. And
Agnes Varda, yeah.
Yeah, and Agnes Varda's movie. There was a scene where the lens kept at a dance. And I've never forgotten this because I went, oh, come on. And you were like, it was my favorite part of the movie. I loved it. It was beautiful. And I'm like, no, it took away from everything. We have a little bit of that here. I knew that you would love this film, and so that's why I wanted to see it and review it for the show. And it's very whimsical. Almost a little too whimsical at times.
I knew you were Mr. Grumpy
So,
Pants over here.
So this plays like a live action Wallace and Gromit, which tends to lend itself a little bit more to the animation than it does in live action. But it's a lot of Tati in there, so I love that as well. I enjoyed the movie. I can recommend the movie, but it was just, there was in between some of those vignettes, which some of them, the one kind of came out of nowhere with the bench and was like, what are we doing now? We're looking at the feet. I want to watch their feet shuffle across. That's cute. The dance sequence is just wonderful, but she falls over into the water a few too many times.
Come on, that was so funny. It was so funny. And it always pays off. It paid off so well.
Oh yeah, they all kind of had the intertwining and stuff, and I thought that was good. But I just felt like the main characters there just didn't kind of hold my interest as much as I really had wanted them to. They were kind of quirky. I think, actually, truly, this film would have been better if it was silent. It really did not need any of the dialogue. It really didn't. There could have been a couple things. I think if it played it.
Well, it could have played as a silent film for sure. Yeah.
Silent film, and a little more daring on that. I think that would have really.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I loved the score, and I loved all the characters. And even though it's a total fantasy of Paris, there's no way Paris is anything like this. It's wonderful to see because you just don't see so many comedies these days have to be quote unquote realistic. They're like these bros who are doing this crazy adventure together, but it's all based in real life, and this is just total fantasy, and I love that.
It's Girls' Weekend. How many of those did we get?
Yeah, Girls' Trip, Girls' This, Bachelorette Party,
Bad Night, or whatever.
Yeah, I'm just sick of it. It's like a different concept. Let's just give us
really
something
bad
a little.
Summer of movies.
Yeah,
we had a
especially
really bad summer.
Right, and comedies have been on I think in particular. I just like I laughed out loud so many times while I was watching this, and so that to me there was just
the opening scene alone when someone opens the door in the winds and everyone just goes and leans over. That was cute.
That was one of the more scenes that was more Tati like. So
well, see, the little Wes Anderson there too.
A little Wes Anderson, I could see that, and that's the part.
My favorite.
I know, but it was not too much Wes Anderson.
It was like, let's watch a tumbleweed fall in front of a shoebox.
But if it was Wes Anderson, right after that, they would also explain to you why that just happened, and they didn't do that. So there you go.
What was the point about it?
And then random celebrities would have shown up for no reason.
Like Tilda Swinton, who was supposed to be Epitomize the Clown at one point in time. Okay. So there we go.
So you're giving it 3
stars.
3 stars.
Yeah, it was cute.
4 stars for me. One of the best of the year.
Yeah, there you go. I look forward to talking about it again. So our next movie. Let's shift gears because this is Real Film Snobs. We like to dip way back in film history from 1925, a Russian film. They were still Russian, right? Or was it the Soviet Union? No, they were Russian.
It was Russia.
Yeah. Sergei Eisenstein, who is pretty much the grandfather of modern editing. This is his first film. It's called Strike. And it tells the story of a revolution, a strike during a factory after a worker is accused of theft. He cannot go on with the shame, and so he kills himself. And so everyone bands together, decides to go on strike, and give a list of their demands to the fat cats who are quite cartoonish in the owners. But by the time, I believe 40 or 60% of the population of Russia did actually work in factories, and the conditions for them and the children who worked there were not very good. And so this was one of the things. This is kind of documenting. I don't know how truthful and in fact this is because it's Film Snobs, not History Snobs.
That's a different show.
We watched it on Labor Day, which actually, when you pointed out, you're like, well, this worked out perfectly.
So amazing.
It works out for
it's
Labor
about
Day.
A union strike. It was great.
When Angela and I watch movies together, there is a little bit of chatter back and forth because we are within the safety of my home, so it's okay. Just not in the theaters, we don't do that. But there were enough of us, both of us, going, wow, Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
wow.
a lot of
Look
that.
at that shot. Wow. I mean, the first half hour alone, I think we both said, wow, 10 times a piece.
I know.
Absolutely incredible. This film is told with such energy and does such a great job with the editing and the montages and showing just where it introduces some of these spies who are like the owl, and it shows him, superimposed with an owl and all these different characters. That was absolutely fantastic. There's a scene where they're fighting against the protesters, and they juxtaposition it with a slaughterhouse, which is horrifying, but rightfully so.
The use of the editing, the montage in that sequence is
it's
very
just
impressive.
absolutely amazing. Now, his next film is Battleship Potemkin, which is one of the greatest films of all time, but this is nipping right at its heels as an incredible film.
Well,
I'd never heard of this one.
And what's interesting about Strike, and gosh, it's almost, I know this is blasphemous to say this, but in a lot of ways, it's almost a better film than Potemkin. Hear me out, because I would say it's more enjoyable. Potemkin is obviously a great film, but there's parts of it, it's heavy, it goes on a bit longer, it's a little bit more didactic and obvious on the whole communist thing. This one is about, you can get into a lot of the but it doesn't really get into that as much. It's more about the workers striking for better conditions, and their demands are not like, oh, this is so horrible. At one point they say, we just think the children should only have to work 6 hours a day, and the fat cats are like, no, that's egregious. And you're like, oh wow, and we think that we should only have to work 8 to 10 hours a day, and the fat cats are like, no. And so I mean, it's not like they're asking for some crazy things, but the photography, as you mentioned, is amazing. Some of the editing, I think Daniel was watching it with us, and I don't think he's seen a lot of Soviet cinema, and he was quite a few times was pretty darn impressed. I mean, how modern this film looks. The use of montage and the way that the masses, as you mentioned, kind of blend in, but also some of the scenes I couldn't even figure by modern standards how he did that with the equipment at the time. There's that one shot where the train is coming at the camera, and I know he must be using tracking, but I'm just thinking how fast it happens in the movie. I'm thinking the cameras in 1925 were gigantic. How did it even? I just was watching, going, I don't even understand how this shot is possible. If you know anything about photography, you have to watch this movie, because you would just be thinking, I don't know how this is possible right now, and how fast the editing is and impressive. It just really impresses. And yes, the characters, the masses are the masses. There's no individual
Real
stories
people.
that you feel for. And then the corporate fat cats are, chomping on their cigars and,
They're
eating.
cartoonish.
Yes, drinking and eating and.
You got the butler coming
But
in
you know
and
which one
giving
they
you
are.
that.
You immediately
Oh,
can
yes.
identify those are the bad guys. Those are the bad guys. Those are the good guys. So it's very fast.
They have the big masses of crowds. They're actual people, and you can't.
Yeah, that's not
immediately-
CGI.
I know the thought is always like, oh, those look pretty real. Oh no, those are, because they are, Brian. They're actual real people. And there are some lighthearted moments in the movie, especially when everyone strikes and they all go home and they're actually able to enjoy the day with everyone. And he's like, I don't have to go to work today. I can play with my
They have a little
child."
picnic. And
Yeah, they have picnic and they have a little bit of that. I couldn't help but think about, and I need to watch Potemkin again, and to kind of compare the two, because I think Potemkin is an incredible film when you see it with a ton of people. When I saw it in the Virginia Theater, and it was, everybody wanted to riot by the end of it, and I'm thinking they would have the same kind of reaction with this one. It's an amazing film and really overlooked.
Well, and especially, his later stuff, Alexander Nevsky in October, his stuff got super, political, of course, and longer, and, always impressive, Eisenstein. But this one, in some ways, it was just, I don't know, it was just
Hour and 20-something
yeah, it's
minutes,
very
and just
short.
like,
It just
boom.
goes by, and it was not a dull moment. We were just like enthralled from every minute. So you can't say that for too many films made in 1925. So
Yeah, very impressive.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we're going to switch gears and move up a decade to 1937. Victor Fleming, you've heard of him, right? We don't talk too much about him. He's directed Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz.
Little movies.
Little movies. He made a very popular film in 1937 called Captain Courageous.
New segment.
And this is our that's right. This is our Oscar list. Angela and I are kind of looking at some of the films that won Oscars, not necessarily for Best Picture. This one won for Best Actor for Spencer Tracy, who plays a Portuguese fisherman. I'll get to that in a second. A young, well-to-do boy played by Freddie Bartholomew, who apparently didn't have a manager to tell him to change his name, was a very popular child actor, and he plays a very well-to-do boy who actually falls off overboard, like in Paris, and is rescued by some fishermen and learns life's lessons while he's out there catching fish for 3 months with a Portuguese fisherman. Did I mention he was Portuguese, played by Spencer Tracy? Now, I've never been a big Spencer Tracy fan.
Neither of us are.
I just don't get it.
Which
But anyway,
my mother finds blasphemous.
he's fine, but here he's doing Portuguese as if it was a Marx Brothers. He sounds like Chico Marx all the time. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm
I
going to
know,
do
it's
this.
so
You
bad.
grab it this, so grab it a fish.
I just kept looking.
And I'm
He
like,
won an Oscar for this performance.
I didn't see who else was nominated. I forgot to look that up because I'm like,
I'm sure in
who else was
1937,
nominated? Come
someone,
on.
Cary Grant,
There's got to be a
someone did something
Barrymore
in
somewhere.
1937.
There's a Barrymore in this movie.
Yes, Lionel Barrymore is in this movie.
And you know,
Someone did something in
Spencer
1937.
Tracy is very, isn't very endearing in this picture. I do like his role. I like what he's doing in this. Not what he's doing. I like his role in this movie. I like the young boy. It's a nice young.
Oh, you did?
adventure
Oh,
for a
I
young
couldn't
boy.
stand him. Oh,
I
couldn't stand
did.
him. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I couldn't stand him. I just wanted to slap this kid.
Oh, really?
Oh, he was so obnoxious.
Oh, he did
Because he was
good. I think he did a
well,
really
you know,
good
and it's
job.
funny because the
You
description,
wanna slap
the
him.
description on IMDb is like a spoiled little brat falls off a ship, and I'm like, yep, that was the movie. And then you get 2 hours of that kid, and he doesn't, you know, at the end he's, you know, but oh man, it really makes you, it really makes you appreciate child actors of today. I would say that is one area where, in a lot of movies, so you compare the kids in It. Compare the kids in It, for instance.
Those Will
which
Smith
is
kids are really.
well, okay, no, I'm talking about the kids in big movies, like Oscar movies. Compare the kids in It, for instance, to this kid, and just the acting level. You know, every time this kid had to cry, which is a lot.
He was a big time.
Every time this kid had to cry, which was a lot towards the end, he was, you know, throwing his arm in his face.
It's very melodramatic. I didn't mind that.
I thought he was so annoying. I was like, oh, can someone just throw him overboard again? When he was like, I'm not going to work. I was like, just, you know, toss him.
How
toss
dare
him.
you?
And Spencer
Oh, I
Tracy was
love-
like, let me sing you a song in Portuguese. And I was just like, oh my God.
Hurdy-gurdy.
I actually really hated this movie. I'm really shocked for a movie that was nominated for Best Picture, Writing and Editing for the Oscars, and then won, as we said, again, for Best Actor for Best Transformation.
I gotta look that up and see. I've meant to
I
look to
know
see
there
who
were
was
better
nominated.
movies in
There had-
37. This is like the golden age of Hollywood. I know there were better performances that year.
But now I like the performance that he's in the back seat of his limo with his friends and explaining to them, no, I'm giving you this. Now for that, I want to be, you have to do this
Yeah,
for
he was
me.
good at bribing his
I
friends.
like
I
that.
know.
He was a little snot. I like that. He did a really good job of that.
Remind you of anyone?
I think it's a good, I thought it was a good movie. I give it 3 stars. I enjoyed it.
Oh, I can watch this again. Victor Fleming. Yeah, I would. Yeah, definitely Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind. Much rather.
You look up
watch those.
IMDb, that's like the 3rd film listed. It was a big movie.
Oh, this was a big hit. The Spencer Tracy accent was. I mean, I know we're more sensitive to that type of thing nowadays, but even then, I'm like.
I couldn't tell you what a Portuguese sound.
I know, but they
sounds
obviously
like,
made him
but
look
I know
tan.
It, yeah, but I know it isn't that because that's Chico Marx. He was doing Chico Marx.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
If it,
You know, in fact, what I'm going to do for people that follow us on our Facebook page, I'm going to look up who else was nominated in 37, and we can ask people who should have won that year instead of Spencer Tracy playing a Portuguese fisherman. Let's do that, okay?
Oh, will we put our money where our mouth is? And if we haven't seen the other ones, do we have to watch them?
We have to watch all the best actor performances from 37?
If you say he doesn't deserve it, then...
Okay, we'll put our money where our mouth is. Dear viewers, you've heard it here first. So
God,
we're
what
going to
did I
look
get
up
us
all
onto?
the best
Oh,
actors.
please don't be a Laurence Olivier movie. Oh, God, what did I say?
Brian,
Please don't be a Laurence
it's 37. It could very well be
I
a
know.
Laurence Olivier movie.
I don't want to watch one of his movies.
I like Laurence Olivier, one of the greatest actors of the English language, Brian.
Oh,
Okay.
give me Sir Ian McKellen.
Okay, so we'll move on to, what is this segment? Oh, it's my segment, Her Fresh Picks, where we review critically acclaimed movies from the current year, that would be 2017, that we missed in the theaters, or in the case of some of these, maybe they never went to theaters, because now with the online giants out there, some films are gone straight to streaming services. So, and I believe this is one of them. It's called I Called Him Morgan, and this is a documentary about the legendary jazz trumpeter Lee Morgan and his wife Helen, who was convicted of his murder in 1972. Now, for music and jazz aficionados already know Lee Morgan. I was not familiar, but many other people would know. He played with greats like Dizzy Gillespie and Wayne Shorter, and this was a big case at the time when it happened in 1972 because he was sort of at, good career point, and his wife killed him, and no one knew why because it seemed like they had this great relationship, and so the film kind of unearths the true story of what really happened. And I thought it was fascinating. I'm really curious to see what you think, because I know you're not, I don't think you're a super huge jazz fan.
Jazz fan. You know, he played jazz in high school, early word class. God, I don't know why I did that. No, I'm familiar with him. The Sidewinder, I do know of that album. I do know of some of the songs, and I swear a couple of them have been used in movies, and I just haven't finished looking that up. Boy, what did I do this week? Anyway, I did enjoy the film. Actually, I enjoyed learning about him, but I really wanted to know more and more about her, especially after everything had happened, because it was fascinating. Because when we're introduced to her, it's a gentleman who has taught a class, and he said, and he bumps, and she explains who she is, and so she kind of gives him a look like, you know who I am, and you know what I did. And he was like, I got to interview sometime. And so he interviews her about a month before her passing and doesn't get to finish that interview. And I would like more of that, because I think that's very interesting, what had happened, especially with the redemption that she had with his brother, I believe is what they talked about. And I thought that was a very emotional and very touching, the way that was described. But I liked it. I thought it was very good. I'd heard about this film at the beginning of the year on one of my podcasts, I believe it was one of them. Anyway, I liked it.
And you can never say anything justifies murder, but I think the film does a good job of showing how it got to that point, and you can really understand.
Yeah.
The majority of crimes, as most people know, if you follow crime statistics, are not, murderers who go around killing. It's crimes of passion. And this is a very good example of that. It was a very instantaneous thing that happened that she didn't really mean to do. She actually just tried to, she didn't actually think it would. And in fact, they even said if it hadn't been snowing and the police, he may have lived under different circumstances, because it was just one shot. It wasn't like she riddled him with bullets or anything. No. I mean, just one shot. But you really, because she really is the reason he was a junkie, and she really picked him up out of, saved his life, ironically, and cleaned him up and got his career going again. And that part of the story I thought was fascinating. But I think it would have been nice to hear even more from her. Where it's lucky that they had the tape recording that they did, because I guess she just didn't give very many interviews after she got out of prison. But it would have been fascinating to get even more of her story.
A great use of that recording, because I had that high hiss sound. So
when
it was getting to that, and then it would cut back to. I loved that.
They did a really good job with the audio, because old tape recording like that, it could have been very
96.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, but it probably didn't. I'm sure the guy didn't keep it in great condition.
No. Yeah, but I mean, that's really impressive. I thought it was well made.
Okay, great. So how many stars for you? 3 stars for me too. Okay, so to wrap up, you gave 3.5. I give 3. Lost in Paris, I'm giving 4 stars. One of the best films of the year. You're giving 3. Captain's Courageous, I cannot recommend, but Brian recommends shockingly. Actually, I thought it would just annoy you as much as it did me. Strike, we both highly recommend. That's a classic.
Amazing.
That's a must see, and it is on Criterion Collection, and it's available online if you have certain services. So look for that. And then of course, you can't advertise for anything. And I Called Him Morgan, which you can also find on streaming services. So as always, we would like to thank our wonderful, hardworking crew and our amazing sponsors for supporting this show. And you can like us on Facebook, you can follow us on Twitter, you can listen to us on KMUZ Radio, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can watch us in Silverton on Scan TV and in Corvallis Access Media, and of course here on CCTV. Did I forget anything?
No, I think that's it. There'll be some skywriting later.
And we'll be some skywriting and who knows what else. This thing gets longer and longer. And of course, we have our website, realfilmsnobs.com. Thank you for watching. Have a great day and great movies.